Today, instead of a sermon, we feature reflections and testimonies from several of our elders who identified as part of the queer community. First, we'll hear from Art DuPont. Art is at the parade, so we have a video from him.
Good morning and happy Pride. I am sending you this message from my favorite room in our home. It's the bathroom. It is my favorite room because it holds treasures collected from many past prides and travel around the world. I love Pride. For me, it symbolizes a beginning, a new life where I can be my real self. Jerry, my partner, and I have lived together for 30 years. And we met walking in the park one night in June. Our conversation was shared. With our conversation, we shared the information about our current lives. They couldn't have been more different. We are both in our 50s. He had lived alone for much of his adult life. I was married for 34 years and was parenting 2 grandchildren. We also discovered that his father and my mother were practically roommates in a nursing home. They were neighbors. And that was a big coincidence. We started sharing time together whenever possible. We found out that we were made to be together. I had been living a secret double life for years. It was something that really bothered me. I had been having thoughts of suicide. Meeting Jerry saved me. In September of that year, someone outed me to my wife. She was very angry with me, and I understand that. We spent days trying to figure out what's going to happen in our own relationship. My wife was against divorce. After many days of tears, I decided that I would leave and I would move in with Jerry, but I would not file for divorce. I ended up moving in with Jerry on September 11th of 1995. All our lives were changed forever. My wife got over being angry over time. We started sharing family get-togethers, and Jerry got used to not living alone. It was quite a change for him. He handled it like a pro. He was a new grandfather overnight, and a good one too. We all got used to our own new situations and even went on a cruise together. It was quite a change for him. People on board began speculating as to who was who in our family. Our new family had a great time and the grandkids loved it. Sadly, several years into my new life, my wife had a stroke and I took over taking care of her and the grandchildren until she was well enough to take over. Jerry was a support in all of this. A very special pride for us was when my 2 grandchildren, who were very young, walked with us in a Phoenix Pride Parade, and they just loved it. They passed out things on the side of the road for everyone. And my wife is now in assisted living with dementia, and Jerry and I moved her there together. I visit her as much as possible, helping her play bingo, and we are a special family.
Yes. And now I invite Bonnie Fraser to the pulpit.
Good morning. I'm Bonnie Fraser, and my pronouns are she and her, and I'm here this morning as an old dyke to share glimpses of my journey. I grew up in the mountains of Colorado with 3 brothers in the 1950s. My identity was cowboy. Being called a girl was an insult. It was quite clear girls had to dedicate their lives to pleasing and advancing their husbands and were meanwhile shallow and silly and just awful. Eventually, I did get married to a nice man, And we both usually put his dreams and his needs before mine. We split after 7 years. In the late 70s, I moved to Phoenix and connected with a very active women's community, mostly closeted, mostly led by lesbians. We had bookstores and dances and classes and retreats and amazing music performances. Famous lesbian singers that went around the country and gave just wonderful performances, and there was so much energy and vigor and noise and celebration. And we're pretty closeted because it was pretty risky in those days. But I realized that lesbian was the most accurate, most joyful label for me. In 1981, I helped organize and then walked in the Lesbian Gay Rights March, the first ever in Phoenix. I even have the T-shirt, the official T-shirt. I don't wear things that tight across the bosom anymore. We were all afraid. We were afraid there would be so few people willing to risk being public that it was going to be an embarrassingly small march. So everyone and their friends all came out. We had 600 to 700 people there. A group of teachers wore paper bags, grocery bags, over their heads because if they had been recognized, they would have been fired. Other women risked losing custody of their children. The yearly event has since become a pride parade, as we've seen this morning. Lesbian and gay people are more accepted today, and we're more into the celebrating mode than the give us our rights, but we now realize we're noticing that other related groups still need to be defended and appreciated. We may need to go back to having rights marches for our many trans, bi, etc. people. I wanted a lesbian partner, but I was not interested in the group who were into butch femme roles, was not comfortable with the group who defined as separatists and wanted no interaction with men. But I did find just the right woman at a CODA meeting. It's 12-step. We were married and together for 15 years, and she's still my good friend, and out there probably watching. When AIDS hit Phoenix in the mid-'80s, gay men lost jobs and friends. They were being thrown out of their homes by families and landlords. They were sometimes even denied services by frightened doctors and nurses. Hundreds of gay men were dying from AIDS across the nation and here in Phoenix. Lesbians, even those who the year before had been adamant separatists, stepped up. The workshops on how to be an AIDS buddy were full of lesbians. We were hospice services for 20-year-old, 30-year-old, 40-year-old men. We learned how to meet emotional and practical needs and how to advocate for medical needs. We were also regular attenders at funerals. For the last 40 years, lesbian communities in Phoenix and in Burlington, Vermont, have given me consistent support and have taught me to claim my own strength. This excerpt from an interview in some lesbian magazine I read somewhere. How long did it take you to fix the engine? 6 months and 2 days. What? 6 months to think it was going to be too hard and I could not do it. 1 day to share my fears with a group of lesbians, and 1 day to complete the job. My lesbian friends continue to remind me to have courage to tackle difficult situations, to take my goals seriously, to be a powerful woman, to speak my truth, to boldly walk my own spiritual path, to know that I'm an asset in a group, even if I talk more than some people and even if I go really deep emotionally, that I'm still welcome and loved. I often claim the name goddess for the sacred energy of life, and I connect with this energy both inside myself and beyond myself. I grow in my ability to human others. I guess if you can't be a lesbian, then the next best thing would be to be a member of UUCP.
And now we invite Walt Torti to our pulpit.
Hello. Just a little nervous, so bear with me. About my wedding ring, my wedding rings, I don't know really whether it's singular or plural. When I was in college, a friend of mine who was also a silversmith made a simple silver band that I admired so much that he finally gave it to me. I did not hint about that much. Really, I didn't. When my partner Tim and I got together, we had a marriage ceremony at the Unitarian Universalist Society at Albany, New York. And mind you, this was in 1976, upstate New York in 1976. John Corrado, who was the minister, married us. He made us go through the marriage counseling like everybody else has to do. When you ask for equality, be careful, you might get it. A few years after that, we moved to Arizona. We went tubing one day down the Salt River, and Tim did not take off his wedding ring and put it in a safe place. While floating down the river, we came to a bit of a rough spot, and Tim's ring was wrested off his hand. Naturally, he was very upset about this. He wanted to have the power company shut down the river so he could get his ring. That didn't happen. Later that summer, unbeknownst to him, I took my wedding ring to a jeweler's and had it split in half, and then gave him that half of a ring for his wedding ring. God, it's been 12 years, and it still hurts. Anyway, after Tim passed away, I took his ring and brought it home, and a couple of months later, it disappeared. I'd been keeping it on my dresser in a little box with my own ring, and it just wasn't there anymore. No idea what happened to it. Sometime later, about a year and a half later, I was vacuuming various parts of the house and was going under the bed in the middle bedroom, and right there, smack dab in the middle, underneath the bed in that room, was the ring. Where'd it come from? I don't know. It just showed up. I took both rings to Berlin Jewelers, who are great people, and had them put back together into one ring. I kept the dividing line to show that the two rings are now one. It's surprising how emotional I got. I was verklempt and could hardly talk, and this is my ring.
And finally, now we have a video from Stephanie Vidmosko.
Hello all, good morning. My name is Stephanie. I go by she, they, their pronouns. I'm a lesbian. I came out in my early 30s, about 1987. At the time, the AIDS epidemic, AZT had just been found to be helpful with the fight against AIDS. It was a time where the general public wasn't supportive to homosexuals. People would lose their children or in custody battles solely because of their homosexuality. They'd lose their jobs because of homosexuality. People were placed in psychiatric units and given electroconvulsive shock therapy in an effort to cure them from homosexuality. Before electroconvulsive therapy, people were given lobotomies where probes would be placed into their lobes of the brain to remove the homosexuality portions, burn them right out. Coming out was a huge event. Coming out was an event you prepared for every time you did it, whether it be with your cousin, your mother, your school teacher, your employer, your best friend, another lesbian. It was something you prepared for. And it was something that took an effort, was frightening and rewarding and strength building. I chose to come out to few friends and family, and of course to other lesbians. I was a single parent at the time. I was responsible for myself, my daughter, and my home, and didn't feel taking the risk of coming out to a large group was a wise decision at that time. So coming out was not a big, huge public event for me until later. And although, having said a little bit about the hardships that we faced back then, we found ways to support each other. We found groups, we formed groups, there were potlucks, there were festivals, there were bookstores where you would go and hear lectures and find friends and be comfortable with people, with other lesbians. There were magazines. There was Lesbian Connections, a magazine that you would receive through the mail every month, wrapped in a brown newspaper wrapping so that other people weren't aware that you were a lesbian and receiving lesbian mail. There was a huge festival every summer up in Michigan. 7,000 women would attend. 98% of that population of women who were attending were lesbians. We ran workshops. We ran daycare for each other. We built roads. We put in plumbing, electricity. For 10 days out of the year, it was lesbian heaven for us, and we let loose. So there was support amongst each other, and it was a great support. You were with like-minded people. You didn't have to hide a thing from them, and you can discuss things that the general population just couldn't understand. I'm glad that today in our society that there's more acceptance, that people coming out are greeted with arms that are just a wee bit more open than what we experienced. Pride marches have taken on a whole different role now. Back then, it was a fight. It was a fight. It was a cause, and we were there. One of the causes that we need to be there for today is for our trans brothers and sisters. Our trans brothers and sisters are experiencing incredible prejudice and blocks that they just don't deserve. So at this time, it's important to link arm in arm with our trans brothers and sisters and fight the fight that we fought years ago and make sure that their rights are in place soon. Have a great Sunday. Have a great Pride Day. Love you all. Bye.
Well, big gratitude to all of the queer elders who shared themselves with us today. We are so lucky to have all of you in our community and to have your wisdom guiding us. Appreciate how open you all were.